NATO and Ukraine are holding emergency talks today in response to last week's Russian attack on the city of Dnipro with what's been described as an experimental hypersonic ballistic missile. President Putin has made it clear that this was his response to Ukraine using longer-range UK and US missiles to hit Russian military assets on Russian territory. Poland's Prime Minister Donald Tusk says the war is, in his words, entering a decisive phase and taking on very dramatic dimensions. But what do Ukrainians want? There's some evidence that an increasing number would accept some sort of deal with Russia to end the fighting. In fact, 52% support that, according to a study by Gallup last week. Ukrainian support for the war has consistently fallen since the invasion in 2022. That year, 73% wished to continue fighting, down to 63% in 2023. This is the first time a majority, albeit slim, have supported a negotiated peace. I'm joined now by Danilo Lubkівський, Director of the Kiev Security Forum and a former Deputy Foreign Minister of Ukraine. Mr. Lubkівський, welcome to the program. Let me put this straight to you. Russian forces are advancing at a much quicker rate than they did through the whole of last year. Is Ukraine now on the back foot?
Well, that's a difficult question, and thank you very much for inviting me and discussing this very important topic.
A pleasure.
Sure, Russia is in its offensive, and Ukrainian military is struggling to deter Ukrainian land to Ukrainian territories against much stronger enemy. The situation, as I understand, on the front line is difficult, but remains under control. With people, and this is true that people are exhausted with many units left threadbare, but for the overall situation still remains under control. Very responsible reaction from the Ukrainian military command. So they report that they continue a very strong deterrence of the Russian actions.
Ukraine still has a lot of support in Western Europe and indeed in the United States to see off the Russians. But we look at significant towns like Pokrovsk. It's a Ukrainian military center, as you will know better than me. It's also a rail and a road hub, always important in times of war. They look like being on the brink of Russian occupation. And we just think, this is now heading in one direction, not quickly, not overnight, but it's a typical Russian maneuver. Grind the enemy down, just keep on going. We can last longer than you. And over time, it works to Russia's advantage.
The reasons of this situation are actually well known and obvious. And one of the core problems which remains, in my opinion, is the belated response, the belated decisions and belated deliveries of weaponry and all other promises, all other issues that were promised to Ukraine by our Western partners. The Ukrainian morale and readiness to fight against much stronger enemy. And here, let me also say that Ukraine now fights not only one nuclear power, but fights against several nuclear power countries, meaning North Korea, saying that every night we are under constant attack by Iranian-made drone killers and so on. So Ukraine fights against several nuclear forces, and definitely that Ukraine's fortress deserves and demands very strong support from the West. At the beginning of your story, you said that how long Ukrainians can fight. But this is question addressed not only to Ukrainians, since Russia wages the war not only against Ukraine, but the West. And this is the question of all of us. How long can we fight against the pure evil which attacks our borders? And here comes the answer. The answer comes that the situation can change if the United States, if the West provides Ukraine with all necessary instruments to attack Russia, to protect Ukraine's freedom and sovereignty according to the international law, and to hit Russia within its territory, to hit the legitimate military assets and targets.
I hear what you're saying, but we are where we are, and I appreciate that at every turn, whether it be modern tanks or fighter jets or these longer range missiles, the NATO allies have been very slow to do it. In the end, they've done it, but they've been slow to do it. They've wasted time, and they probably haven't done it in scale, in enough scale. So I understand all that. But we're in a situation now where even Germany still won't hand over its substantial stockpile of Taurus missiles, which are a lot more than the Storm Shadow or even the American one that you've currently been using. And you've now got Donald Trump coming down the pike as well. I mean, you add these things together, belated, inadequate Western support, a man coming into the White House, the most important country in NATO, who seems to want to force you to the bargaining table.
There is no country in the world which stands for peace and wishes to establish long-lasting, fair peace against the Russian enemy. And this country is Ukraine. We stand for peace, but we want to have this peace fair and strong and lasting.
Of course.
For that, this is obvious that there is only one way how to respond to the Russian aggression. If you accept this, if you accept the Russian offensive, if you accept Russia's rules of play, it means that the war just starts, not ends, because that would be a clear and obvious, compelling evidence and example to other nations who try to undermine the world order in order to their own selfish interests. That would be an example to other authoritarian regimes how to deal, how to behave, what kind of politics to conduct in this world.
And there is a. Sorry, on you go, Minister.
Yes, you're welcome. Please.
And there is a sense now that in Ukraine and other parts of the world, this kind of axis of evil of Russia, North Korea, China, Iran, is all kind of coming together in a way that sometimes you wonder if the West really appreciates what's actually happening. But I come back to Mr. Trump, which neither you nor I chose to be in the White House, but that's where he is, or soon will be. And isn't it likely that he's going to force your hand? He's going to say, no, this isn't working. No more military support. I can do a deal with Mr. Putin, but I'm going to force you to the negotiating table. How do you handle that?
Before I answer for that question, very interesting and to tell you frankly, difficult question, I would like to thank the British people for their leadership in making everything possible to support Ukraine. This is very important for us. Even those news that come from from the press that we have already received additional ammunition, additional missiles that are so desperately needed for Ukrainian military. These news are, this is a great story of support, solidarity, and the right way to go ahead. And that's a good example for Donald Trump and his administration. There is only one solution of what we may together we may succeed in is to stick to the principle of peace through strength. This is what Ukrainian delegation and the Ukrainian foreign minister and the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, are trying to tell even today at the NATO meeting, NATO-Ukraine Council meeting. The principles of peace through strength is to do everything possible to stop Putin and his armada and to make them understand that Ukraine's sovereignty cannot be conquered, destroyed, and eliminated. That would be our huge common success. And then to make Ukraine a NATO member, which is, in my opinion, is the only key how to stop this war. So the West should be serious about what's going on. Ukraine actually gave the West an additional time to get prepared. This is not the war about Ukraine only. This is the war about the West. And I completely agree with what Admiral Bauer, top NATO military official, yesterday said, that you have to change your mindset. This is the reality we live in. We live under the constant strike of Russia. We live every night we spend in our shelters. And for that, my message to your audience is that we have to change, all of us, we have to change our mindset. We live in the world when they want to destroy us all. And you should be aware of this.
Well, on these words, we'll leave it. I'm grateful for that message. Thank you for joining us on Times Radio. Danilo Lubkівський, former Deputy Foreign Minister of Ukraine.